I did not realize my marriage had quietly turned into a corporate team-building exercise until my wife invited me to dinner with her coworkers like she was scheduling a product demo. That was the first red flag. Not because married people cannot go to dinner with coworkers. They can. Healthy couples do that all the time. No, the issue was the way she invited me. Not, "Hey, do you want to come?" Not, "It might be fun." Not even the classic fake marriage courtesy line, "Everybody's bringing their spouses." She stood in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, and said, "You should come on Friday. I think it would be good." Good for who? That was my first thought. My second thought was that whenever my wife, Sienna, said something would be good, it usually meant good for her image, good for some performance, or good for whatever version of our marriage she was currently exporting to the outside world. I was standing at the counter making coffee. She was dressed for work already, all sharp lines and perfume, and that expression she had started wearing a lot over the last few months. The one that said she had mentally promoted herself and quietly demoted me. "Good," I repeated. "Like vegetables? Tax refunds? Root canals?" She glanced at me with that little smile she used when she wanted to be amused without actually giving me the dignity of a full laugh. "Don't start. I haven't even warmed up." "It's just dinner." "Right. And the Titanic was just a boat ride." I took my mug and leaned back against the counter. "Who's going?" She listed names I half knew from stories, complaints, and accidental late-night phone calls she took on the balcony when she thought I was asleep. Priya, Jenna, Mark, Elise. "And Daniel," she added casually. "Of course, Daniel." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means every story from your office somehow ends with Daniel in the room. I'm starting to think he's not a coworker. I think he's the office emotional support golden retriever." She rolled her eyes. "He's just confident." Men women describe as just confident are never just anything. She grabbed her bag. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Make weird little comments because you're uncomfortable." I almost laughed at that. Almost. But there is a point in a marriage where things stop being funny in the moment and only become funny later, when you're telling the story to somebody else or to the internet, or to your future self while signing documents. "I'm not uncomfortable," I said. "I'm observant. Those are different animals." "Whatever." She headed toward the door. "Be ready by 7. Then she left. I stood there listening to the door close, the apartment suddenly too quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the low mechanical sigh of the HVAC, trying its best to cool a place that cost more per month than my first car, my second car, and one emotionally devastating semester of college combined. The apartment was beautiful, I'll give her that. Floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown view, kitchen island the size of an aircraft carrier, soft lighting that made even bad decisions look elegant after sunset. It was also expensive enough to make a sensible person sweat when rent day came around. I was the sensible person. The lease was in my name. The utilities were mostly on my cards. The insurance, the parking, the internet, half the furniture, all me. Not because I was trying to be some noble provider from a black and white movie. Mostly because when we moved in, Sienna said her income was better used for flexibility, which is corporate wife language for I'd rather not. And because at the time, I still believed marriage was a team sport, not a subscription service where one person pays and the other leaves critical reviews. The lease ended in 2 weeks. That mattered later. At the time, it was just a detail floating around in my head with a few others I had been trying not to arrange into a pattern. Sienna had gotten colder over the last year, but not in the dramatic movie way. No sudden screaming fights, no mysterious girls' trips. It was subtler than that. She corrected me more in public. She interrupted me more at home. She laughed harder at other men's jokes than she ever laughed at mine, which was offensive on at least 3 levels because first, my jokes were better, second, I was there, and third, some of those men had the comedic timing of a folding chair. She had also developed a habit of speaking about me as if I were a mildly outdated appliance. Functional, familiar, not exciting, difficult to replace without effort but no longer something she admired. That kind of contempt does not arrive in one big scene. It leaks in, through tone, through pauses, through those moments where somebody answers for you before you've spoken, because they've already decided your role in the room. Friday came, and by 6:30 I was dressed and ready. Not because I was eager, because I hate giving anybody the satisfaction of calling me difficult when they've already spent weeks auditioning for the role of problem. Sienna stepped out of the bedroom in a black dress that was elegant enough to start a fight in the wrong neighborhood. Her hair was perfect, makeup sharp, perfume expensive. She looked incredible. She also looked like a woman going somewhere she wanted to impress people, which, notably, had not been how she looked during our last 3 date nights. She saw me by the door and paused. "Oh, you actually dressed up." I looked down at my jacket. I figured if I was being displayed, I should at least be properly framed. She sighed. "Can you just be normal tonight?" "Depends. Are your coworkers normal?" She gave me that flat look wives develop when they want to communicate disappointment and superiority at the same time. It is honestly an advanced skill. The restaurant was one of those modern places where everything was either black, gold, or aggressively minimalist, and the menu looked like it had been designed by a man who hated both hunger and fonts. Her coworkers were already there. And there he was. Daniel, of course. Tall, tailored, smile like he had practiced it in reflective surfaces. He stood when we approached, which I'll admit was a strong move. Confident, warm, socially fluent. He reached for mine. "You must be Ethan. Great to finally meet you, man." "Likewise," I said. "I've heard so much about you I was beginning to think you were a shareholder." He laughed. Sienna did not. Interesting start. We sat. Drinks were ordered. At first things were fine. Work stories, office gossip. One woman, Jenna, talked about managing up with the intensity of a war historian. Priya was smart and dry and seemed like the only person at the table capable of recognizing nonsense in real time. Mark was one of those men who peaked emotionally at business school and never came back down. Elise had the dangerous calm of someone who looked sweet until she started discussing other people like case studies. Daniel, naturally, was in his element. He had a story for everything. He listened with his whole face. He asked follow-up questions. He had that polished, easy charm that made people lean in half an inch without realizing it. I watched Sienna around him. That was the part nobody warns you about, not the obvious stuff. The quieter humiliation is watching your wife become more animated for another man's presence than she has been in your kitchen in 6 months. She laughed more, touched her hair more, tilted her head when he spoke. None of it was enough to be called out without sounding paranoid. All of it was enough to be felt. At one point, Daniel asked me what I did, and before I could answer, Sienna jumped in. "He works in operations." I turned slowly. "I do? Good to know. Should I tell my actual job?" A small laugh from Priya. Sienna smiled with her teeth. "You know what I mean." "No," I said pleasantly. "That's why words are useful." Daniel raised both hands a little. "Okay, now I definitely like him." "Give it time," Sienna said. "He's very quiet at first." That one slid across the table like a small blade dressed up as a joke. Jenna laughed. "I was about to say, he doesn't seem quiet." "Oh, he can be," Sienna said, taking a sip of wine. "Especially in groups like this." I nodded. "I try not to interrupt professionals while they perform." Priya choked on her drink, trying not to laugh. Sienna shot me a look. There it was again, that current between us. Her irritation. My refusal to sit there smiling while she translated me into a smaller, more convenient version of myself. The appetizers came, then the wine, then the momentum, and once the table warmed up, Sienna got looser. That was when the evening stopped feeling like dinner and started feeling like a live demonstration of how much disrespect she thought I would politely absorb in public. "He's not really ambitious," she said at one point, like she was sharing a charming little fact about my favorite cereal. "He's more steady." Mark smirked into his glass. I cut a piece of salmon and said, "That's true. I lack the thrilling instability of men who schedule meetings to discuss other meetings." That got a real laugh from 3 people. Even Daniel smiled wider. Sienna did not. She leaned back, crossing her legs. "See? That? He does that thing where he thinks sarcasm is a personality." I looked at her. "It's not my whole personality. Could have fooled me." Elise let out the kind of laugh people use when they're not sure if they're watching flirting or a slow-motion vehicle collision. I set down my fork carefully. "Good thing I bring range then?" Daniel jumped in, probably trying to keep things playful. "Honestly, sarcasm is a survival trait in most marriages. Only the good ones," I said. Priya coughed into her napkin to hide a grin. Sienna swirled her wine. "Well, some people use humor to compensate." I turned to her fully now. "For what?" That should have been the moment she backed off. A smart spouse would have. A kind spouse definitely would have. Sienna smiled instead. Not warmly, not lovingly. The way people smile before they say something they already know they'll later call not a big deal. For not being very driven. There it was. Not loud, not dramatic. Just clean and public and aimed directly at my ribs. The table went slightly still. Not completely. Nobody froze like in a movie. But the energy shifted. You can feel when a joke stops being communal and becomes targeted. I took a sip of water, set the glass down. Then I smiled. "Driven?" I said. "That's interesting. Last time I checked, I was driving most of the bills." A tiny silence. Then Priya looked down, smiling into her drink. Mark suddenly became very interested in the candle. Jenna's eyes did that thing women's eyes do when a situation gets good and terrible at the same time. Sienna's face cooled several degrees. "I didn't mean financially," she said. "Of course not," I replied. "That would make this awkward." Daniel tried to rescue the mood. "Okay, new topic. Somebody tell the worst client story they've ever had." People laughed. The current moved. The table recovered. But Sienna had that look now. The one that said I had embarrassed her. Not by saying anything false, but by refusing to play dead while she stepped on my neck in public. The second course came. So did the flirting. It wasn't theatrical. That would have been easier, honestly. No hand on the thigh under the table. Just 1,000 socially acceptable little choices. Daniel complimented her necklace. She touched it and said, "You noticed." He said, "I noticed details." I almost applauded. It was such a professionally polished line I wanted to ask if it came with a warranty. Then he asked how she handled working with so many strong personalities. And she laughed in that breathy, pleased way I had not heard directed at me in months. "Oh, I manage," she said. He grinned. "I can see that." I leaned back in my chair and watched them like a man observing a home renovation show about his own house. At some point I said mildly, "You two need a room, or just a better audience?" Jenna laughed too loudly. Daniel raised an eyebrow but smiled. "We're just talking." "I know," I said. "That's why I said room. If this was more, I'd suggest a hotel." Priya actually snorted. Sienna turned to me, annoyed. "Relax, don't be insecure." There it was. The cheapest card in the deck. Not because I was wrong. Because men are supposed to accept disrespect gracefully now, like emotional doormen. Hold the door open for humiliation and thank everyone for bringing it inside. I looked at her for a beat, then nodded slowly. "Right. My mistake. Next time I'll bring rose petals." She stared at me. Daniel took a sip of wine, suddenly interested in not existing. Then Mark, because God loves irony, decided that was the perfect moment to ask, "So what does Ethan actually do?" I opened my mouth. Sienna beat me to it. "He helps," she said with a little shrug. "Sometimes." The table laughed. Not everybody. Not fully. But enough. Enough for me to hear exactly what kind of husband she thought she'd brought to dinner. Enough for me to understand this wasn't accidental anymore. Enough for me to make a decision. I smiled, not because I was amused, Because when you finally see the full shape of a person's contempt, there's a strange calm that comes with it, like finding the source of a leak after months of water damage. Terrible news, sure, but at least now you know where to aim the hammer. I set down my glass and looked at her. "You're being disrespectful." The words landed flat and clean. No raised voice, no shaking hands, no theatrical speech, just truth, placed gently in the middle of the table like a loaded gun. And for the first time all night, nobody laughed. She rolled her eyes immediately, like I had just complained about the weather. "Oh, come on," she said. "Don't make this dramatic." "I'm not," I replied calmly. "I'm just pointing out what's happening." Jenna shifted in her chair. Priya watched us with the quiet focus of someone who had just canceled her mental Netflix subscription because this was better. Daniel leaned back slightly, hands loosely together, clearly trying to stay neutral. Smart move. When couples start fencing in public, the safest place is behind your glass. Sienna sighed like I had inconvenienced her. "You're reading too much into everything." "No," I said. "I'm reading exactly what you're writing." That got a small, involuntary smile from Priya again. She hid it behind her napkin. Sienna's expression tightened. She did not like losing control of the narrative. She especially did not like losing it in front of people she wanted to impress. "If you're uncomfortable," she said, her tone sharpening, "you didn't have to come." I nodded once. "Good to know for next time." "There won't be a next time if you keep acting like this." I leaned back. "You publicly humiliate me for an hour, flirt with another guy, and I behave badly." Daniel opened his mouth slightly, then closed it. Not his circus. Sienna crossed her arms. "You're being ridiculous." I tilted my head. "Or you're being disrespectful." There it was again. Same sentence. Same calm tone. No escalation. That seemed to irritate her more than yelling would have. She gave a short laugh. "If you don't like it, get out." There was a beat. Somebody, I think Mark, chuckled awkwardly, assuming it was still playful. I looked at her. She didn't look away. Her expression said she meant it. "Seriously," she added a little louder. "Get out." Now nobody laughed. You could actually feel the table freeze. The air thickened. Forks stopped moving. Even the waiter passing by slowed down for half a second, sensing something human and messy. I held her gaze. Then I nodded. "Okay." No sarcasm, no speech, no drama. I reached for my jacket, which was hanging on the back of my chair. The sound of the fabric sliding off the wood felt louder than it should have. I put it on slowly, like I was leaving a meeting that had simply ended. Nobody stopped me. That part was interesting. Not because I expected them to physically block the exit. But usually somebody says something. "Hey man, don't go." Or "Come on, sit down." Or at least a week, "It's just a joke." Nothing. They watched. Sienna's expression shifted slightly. I think she expected hesitation. Maybe a little pleading. Maybe a sarcastic comment. Something to confirm that she still controlled the frame. I didn't give her any of that. I just picked up my phone, looked at the table one more time and said, "Have a good night." Then I walked away. The restaurant noise swallowed me almost immediately. Glasses clinking, music, low conversations, the normal world continuing, completely indifferent to the fact that my marriage had just quietly cracked in half between appetizers and dessert. Outside, the air was cool. I stood there for a second, breathing, not shaking, not angry, just done. That's the weird part about certain moments. You expect fireworks, you get clarity instead. No confusion, no doubt. Just a clean mental line, before and after. I pulled out my phone and ordered a ride. While I waited, I replayed the last 10 minutes in my head. Not obsessively, just once, like reviewing security footage. The words, her tone, the silence. The second, "Get out." Yeah, no misunderstanding there. The car arrived, I got in, gave the driver my brother's address. Halfway there, he asked, "Rough night?" I laughed softly. Something like that. He nodded like that made sense, which I appreciated. My brother lived about 20 minutes away, Smaller place, older building, but warm, comfortable. The kind of apartment where nothing matched but everything worked. He opened the door in a hoodie and socks, holding a slice of pizza like a man who had given up on pretending adulthood was organized. He looked at me, then at the jacket, then at my face. "You good?" I walked past him into the living room. "Yeah." He closed the door slowly. That "yeah" sounded expensive. I sat down on his couch. "I'm just done." He leaned against the wall. "Done like, fight done? Or done done?" "Done done." He nodded once. No dramatic reaction. "That's why he's my brother." "Pizza?" he asked. "Yeah." He handed me a slice. We ate in silence for a minute. The TV was on mute, some late-night show host moving his hands energetically about something irrelevant. Finally, he said, "What happened?" "She told me to get out." He blinked. "Like, leave the restaurant?" "Yep." "And you left?" "Yep." "And?" "And nothing. That's kind of the point." He chewed slowly. "You mad?" I shook my head. "No, that's the weird part. I'm not mad. I'm finished." He nodded again. "You can crash here." "Thank you." "You want a beer?" "No, I want sleep." He tossed me a spare blanket. "Bathroom's free. Couch is yours." I stretched out. The couch wasn't great, but it didn't matter. My brain was already shifting gears, not emotionally, logistically. That's another thing people misunderstand. Calm men don't explode. They reorganize. I woke up early. No alarm. Just that quiet internal click that happens when your mind has already decided something while you were sleeping. Sunlight came through the blinds. My brother was still asleep. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee from the automatic machine he never turned off. I sat up, grabbed my phone, and opened my email. Then I opened the lease. 2 weeks left. Tenant, me. Renewal option, pending. Contact, property manager. I stared at the document for a few seconds, not with anger, with clarity. She told me to get out. Okay, I got out. Now the rest followed naturally. I stepped into the kitchen, poured coffee, and dialed the property manager. He picked up on the third ring. "Good morning, this is Aaron." "Hey Aaron, it's Ethan from Unit 2104. "Oh hey Ethan, everything okay?" "Yeah, just calling about the lease. I won't be renewing." Short pause. "Okay, you sure? We can send the renewal paperwork today." "No need." "All right, move-out date would be the end of the current term." "Correct." "You want us to start scheduling showings?" "Yes." Another pause. Slightly longer. He probably heard something in my tone. "Everything all right?" he asked carefully. "Yeah," I said. "Just simplifying." "Understood. I'll send the notice." "Appreciate it." I hung up. No drama, no speech, just a checkbox flipped. I took a sip of coffee and looked out the window. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. Not happy, but lighter. Decisions do that. They remove the fog. My brother shuffled into the kitchen, half awake. "You're up early." "Yeah." He opened the fridge. "You look like you just bought or sold something." "I canceled the lease." He froze with the milk carton in his hand. "You what?" "I'm not renewing. They're starting showings." He blinked slowly. "She knows?" "No." He poured milk into his coffee. "That's cold." I shrugged. "It's practical." He took a sip. "You filing too?" "Yeah." He nodded. "You're really done?" "Yeah." He leaned back against the counter. "You okay?" I thought about it. Then I smiled slightly. "Yeah," I said. "She told me to get out." He raised an eyebrow. "So I did." By mid-morning, the email from the property manager arrived. Formal, polite, efficient. Notice of non-renewal. Showings may begin within 24 or 48 hours. Tenant responsible for vacating by end of term. Standard corporate language that sounds harmless until you realize it's basically a countdown timer with punctuation. I didn't text Sienna. Not yet. There's a particular kind of power in letting reality introduce itself. I spent the rest of the morning at my brother's kitchen table, laptop open, quietly lining things up. I contacted a lawyer, nothing theatrical, just a short consultation request. Divorce isn't romantic, but it is extremely administrative. Forms, dates, assets, signatures. The unglamorous machinery of two people admitting the experiment failed. By noon, everything was in motion. Around 1, my phone buzzed. Sienna. Of course. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Her voice came fast, tight. Where are you? At my brother's. You left. You told me to. You didn't come home. Yes. Pause. You could almost hear her recalculating tone. Are you coming back today? Not sure. What does that mean? It means I'm not sure. Another pause, sharper this time. You're being childish. I smiled slightly. I left when you told me to leave. That's actually the opposite of childish. She exhaled hard. Can we just talk tonight? We are talking now. I mean in person. I'll think about it. She didn't like that. What is going on with you? Nothing. I'm simplifying. That doesn't mean anything. It will. She went quiet for a second. You're overreacting. I'm reacting exactly once. I didn't mean it. You said it twice. Silence. Then defensive. Everyone says things in the moment. Everyone also hears them. She sounded frustrated now. So what? You're just going to disappear? No. Then what are you doing? Making decisions. That line landed, I could tell. What decisions? She asked. You'll see, she scoffed. Are you trying to scare me? No, I'm trying to stop pretending. She hung up first. I set the phone down and went back to my coffee. 3 hours later, she found out. I wasn't there, but I can reconstruct it almost perfectly. Real life is predictable that way. Doorbell. She opens it, expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor. Instead, a polite guy in business casual with a tablet. Hi, I'm Aaron with Property Management. We're scheduling move-out preparations and initial showings. Confusion. What? The lease for this unit isn't being renewed. Pause. I think you have the wrong apartment. No, ma'am. Unit 2104. Ethan is listed as the tenant. Longer pause. I don't know anything about that. I understand. We just need to coordinate times for showings. That's when panic starts. Because this isn't emotional. This is procedural. You can't argue with procedure. It doesn't care about tone. My phone rang. I let it buzz for 2 seconds and answered. What the hell is going on? She demanded. They're here. Someone from the building. They're saying we have to move out. The lease is ending. You canceled it? I didn't renew it. That's the same thing. Functionally, yes. Her voice rose. Where am I supposed to go? You can rent it yourself. You know I can't afford this place alone. I'm aware. Are you serious right now? I am more serious than ever before. Silence. Not calm silence. Shock silence. You're doing this because of one dinner? She said finally. No, I'm doing this because of everything that led to it. This is insane. You're punishing me. I'm removing my support. Her breathing got sharper. This is petty. This is consequences. You're ruining my life. No, I said evenly. I'm just not paying for it anymore. She didn't speak for a second. Then, softer, almost disbelieving, you would actually do this? I already did. Another long pause. I didn't think you'd go this far. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't think I'd leave either. She hung up. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I opened my email and checked the message from the lawyer. Consultation confirmed. Forms attached. Estimated timeline. I filled them out carefully. Sent them. No speech, no announcement, no revenge montage. Just another checkbox. Late afternoon, my phone lit up again. Sienna. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. 3 in a row. Then a text. This is insane. Call me. I didn't. Half an hour later, another text. Are you seriously not answering? I still didn't. Because at this point, silence was not cruelty. It was consistency. Around 6, I received the confirmation from the lawyer. Filing scheduled, documents prepared. I downloaded the PDF, looked at it. Our names next to each other, one last time, in legal formatting. It felt oddly anticlimactic. I opened a new email. To Sienna subject, documents, no message, just attachment, send. 5 minutes later, my phone exploded. Call, call, call. I muted it. Then a text. What is this? Another. Are you actually filing? Another. You can't be serious. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, because everything I needed to say was already said. She told me to get out, so I did. And then I stopped paying for the life she thought was hers. Monday morning felt strangely normal. That's the part nobody tells you about major life decisions. You expect the world to look different. Instead, the coffee still tastes like coffee. Traffic still moves like it's personally offended by your existence, and your email inbox still fills with messages that have absolutely nothing to do with the fact that your marriage just ended. I got dressed at my brother's place, borrowed his iron because my shirt looked like I slept inside a gym bag, and drove to work. The entire ride I felt calm. My phone had 12 missed calls from Sienna, 3 voicemails, 7 texts. I didn't open them. Work was work. That's another underrated advantage of employment. It forces you into a structure that doesn't care about your personal drama. I parked in the underground lot, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the building entrance. She was standing there, leaning against the low concrete wall near the doors, arms wrapped around herself, like she'd been there for a while. She saw me immediately and straightened. Ethan. I stopped a few steps away. Morning. That threw her. She probably expected coldness or anger. Politeness is confusing when someone expects a fight. You're really doing this? She asked. I already did. She stepped closer. Can we talk? We're talking. Not like this. I glanced at the office doors. People were already coming in. A couple of coworkers slowed down slightly, pretending not to look. Corporate buildings run on silent observation. What do you want to say? I asked. She took a breath. I overreacted. Friday. I shouldn't have said that. No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. I didn't mean it. You said it twice. She flinched. I was embarrassed. It doesn't change anything. You put me on the spot. She looked down briefly. I'm sorry. There it was. Not dramatic. Not perfect. But real enough. I nodded once. Okay. Her eyes lifted quickly. Okay? Relief flashed across her face. Too quickly. So, we can fix this, she said, stepping closer. Right? We just overreacted. Both of us. I shook my head slightly. No, I reacted once. You've been acting for months. She exhaled sharply. That's not fair. A coworker walked past us and gave me a subtle nod, like he was acknowledging I was in the middle of something messy. Offices are full of silent alliances. I came here early, she said softly. I wanted to talk before you went in. I see that. I didn't sleep, she frowned. You're being distant. I'm being consistent. She rubbed her forehead. I didn't think you'd file for divorce. I didn't think you'd tell me to get out. That was one moment. It wasn't. She looked frustrated now. So that's it? You're just throwing everything away? I almost laughed at the phrasing. You told me to leave, I said calmly. I left. Everything else is just logistics. Her voice tightened. I didn't mean the marriage. I know. What does that mean? It means you didn't think your words had consequences. She took a step closer. I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying. I see that. Then stop. Stop this. She gestured vaguely, like this meant lawyers, emails, reality. I shook my head. You're trying to rewind. I'm moving forward. Her eyes filled slightly, not dramatic tears, just the kind that show up when someone realizes control is gone. We can go to counseling, she said quickly. We can reset. I'll do whatever. That sounds like effort, I said. It should have started before you introduced me as background equipment. She swallowed. So you're really done? I met her eyes, not angry, not cold, just steady. Yes. She shook her head slowly. You're not even upset. I was, months ago. She stared at me like she was trying to find the man she expected, the one who argued, defended, negotiated, the one who still needed her approval. He wasn't there. I didn't think you'd actually walk away, she whispered. I didn't think you'd actually push. We stood there for a moment. People continued walking past, doors opening, bad coffee being consumed, Monday continuing its indifferent march. Finally, she said, So, that's it. Yes. She nodded slowly, like she was memorizing the moment. I'm sorry, she said again. I adjusted my bag. Take care, Sienna. I walked past her toward the doors. She didn't follow. A few weeks later, the apartment was empty. I went back there again, towards the end of my lease, to pick up the rest of my things. I walked through slowly. It's strange how quickly a place stops belonging to you once the decision is made. A few weeks earlier, I had been paying for every square foot of it. Now it felt like a hotel room after checkout. I left the keys on the counter and closed the door behind me. The divorce paperwork moved exactly like paperwork always does, slowly, predictably, unemotionally. Emails. Sienna looked tired during the final meeting. Not hostile, not dramatic, just resigned. She tried once more, quietly, after we signed. Are you sure? I answered the same way I always had. Yes. She nodded, like she already knew. After that, life did what life does. It kept moving. I found a smaller apartment. Nothing fancy. Clean, practical, affordable. The kind of place where you don't feel like you're financing a lifestyle for someone else. I bought a couch that I actually liked. Set up a desk near the window. Work stayed busy. Friends asked questions. My brother kept making terrible coffee and pretending it was artisanal. Things settled. One evening, months later, I ran into Priya from that dinner. Completely by accident. Grocery store. She recognized me first. Hey, she said, surprised. Ethan, right? Yeah. We chatted for a minute. Small talk. Life updates. Then she hesitated and said, I always wondered what happened after that night. I smiled slightly. I left. She nodded. Yeah, I figured. Then she added, honestly, that took guts. I shrugged. It took clarity. She smiled. Same thing sometime. We said goodbye, and I walked to my car with a bag of groceries and a quiet sense of closure. Because by then, the anger was gone. The frustration too. All that remained was the lesson. Respect isn't loud when it disappears. It fades quietly. In jokes, in tone, in how someone introduces you to the world. And once it's gone, everything else is just logistics. She told me to get out. So I did. I walked away from being treated like a footnote in my own life. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.